Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. In the bustling heart of Los Angeles, Premium Auto Repair was known for its high-end clientele and flashy cars. The shop was a sanctuary for car enthusiasts, but it was also a den of arrogance, where the mechanics prided themselves on their expertise. Among them was Marcus, the owner, a man whose ego was as inflated as the tires he serviced. One fateful afternoon, a disheveled man in his 50s approached the shop. His clothes were tattered, and his gray hair was unkempt, but his eyes sparkled with an unusual intensity. He paused at the entrance, gazing at a sleek Porsche 911 that had been abandoned for days. "Can I fix it in exchange for food?" he asked, his voice steady despite the mocking laughter that erupted from the mechanics inside. Tyler, the youngest mechanic, scoffed, "This isn't a soup kitchen, Grandpa." Marcus barely glanced up from his paperwork. "Jake, call security. We don't need these guys begging for money here." "I'm not asking for money," the man replied, his calm demeanor cutting through the laughter. "I'm asking for work. I can fix this Porsche in exchange for a meal." The laughter intensified, but the man remained unfazed. He stepped closer to the car, his eyes narrowing as he examined the exposed engine. "What's wrong with it?" he asked, ignoring the jeers. Marcus finally looked up, irritation etched on his face. "The problem is you're in my shop, acting like you belong here." The man tilted his head, listening intently as Jake started the engine for another failed test. "Direct injection system," he said, his voice calm. "Fuel pressure sensor failing. That's why the engine stalls at high revs. It's not mechanical, it's electronic." Silence fell over the shop. Jake, who had spent 3 days searching for the issue, stared in disbelief. "How do you know that just by listening?" "Lucky guess," Marcus sneered, but the man smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. "It's not a guess. That specific noise occurs when the sensor sends inconsistent data to the control unit." Sarah, the only female mechanic, watched intently from the back. Something about the man's confidence intrigued her. "How do you know so much about Porsches?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "I've worked with sports cars before," he replied, his tone evasive. "Where?" Marcus pressed, sarcasm dripping from his words. "At various places," the man said, his eyes darkening momentarily. "I can prove I'm right about the sensor. I just need a diagnostic tool." Tyler pointed to an expensive machine in the corner. "Do you know how to use it?" "I do." Marcus, intrigued despite himself, decided to give the man a chance. "If you diagnose the problem correctly, I'll give you $20 and a sandwich. But if you're wrong, I never want to see you near my shop again." The man nodded, unfazed by the stakes. As he approached the scanner, Sarah noticed something unusual. His hands weren't shaking with nervousness, they trembled with contained anxiety, as if he were about to reveal a part of himself he had kept hidden for too long. The scanner beeped to life, and the mechanics gathered around, expecting a spectacle of failure. Marcus recorded the scene, eager to capture the humiliation. $20. He doesn't even know how to turn this thing on, Jake whispered. But the man connected the diagnostic cable with ease, navigating the menus as if it were second nature. Code P0294. Fuel pressure sensor out of parameters, he announced confidently. The silence was deafening. Jake checked the reading, his face draining of color. That's right, he admitted reluctantly. Beginner's luck, Marcus muttered, but the man's eyes glinted dangerously. "Do you want me to explain why this sensor fails on this model when the fuel filter isn't changed at the recommended intervals?" Marcus was caught off guard, unable to respond. Tyler tried to regain control. "Okay, you got lucky this time, but betting on a hunch doesn't make you a mechanic." "A hunch?" The man smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I can list 3 other problems this car will have in the next 6 months if they aren't fixed now." "How can you know that?" Sarah asked, stepping closer. "Because I've seen this pattern of failures hundreds of times," he replied, his voice steady. Marcus, losing control of the situation, approached aggressively. Listen here, Grandp. I don't know what game you're playing, but this is a serious repair shop. Tricks. The man stared him down. Want to see a real trick? He walked over to a BMW X5 that had been sitting idle for weeks. You told the customer they need a new engine, right? Marcus tensed. How do you know that? The problem isn't the engine, the man continued. It's the high-pressure fuel pump. A $1,200 part. You quoted $15,000 for a new engine. Tyler swallowed hard. How can you tell just by looking? Because I heard the telltale noise when you started the car earlier. The man opened the hood, pointing out specific components with surgical precision. Look at these fuel lines, the wear here, the oxidation there. These are classic symptoms of a high-pressure pump failure. Jake checked with another scanner, confirming the diagnosis. My God, Sarah murmured. If he's right, we were going to charge the customer $14,000 more for a problem that doesn't exist. Marcus, realizing he was losing control, dismissed it as coincidence. 2 coincidences in a row, nothing more. The man stared at him, a look of quiet authority in his eyes. Coincidence, like when you said my diagnosis was beginner's luck. The tension in the workshop was palpable. Sarah felt she was witnessing something much bigger than a simple misunderstanding. Do you still want that sandwich? Marcus asked sarcastically. The man was silent for several long seconds. I've been many things in my life, he said finally. But I've never pretended to be something I'm not. He turned to leave, but Marcus couldn't let him go. Hey, wait a minute, he shouted. You think you can just walk out like some kind of hero? Heroes don't exist, the man replied quietly. There are only people who have lost everything and still try to help others. As he walked away, Sarah felt a pang of sadness. She watched him disappear down the street, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. That night, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the man than met the eye. The next morning, she arrived early and began researching. If her suspicions were correct, there would be digital traces of his extraordinary technical knowledge. Hours later, she stumbled upon a forum discussing the very issues he had diagnosed. David Williams, she murmured, staring at the screen. 3-time Formula One world champion known as the Ghost, for his ability to appear out of nowhere and win impossible races. The photos showed a younger man with dark hair, holding trophies, surrounded by crowds chanting his name. Further research revealed the tragedy. In 2009, during a race in Monaco, a miscalculation caused his car to crash at 300 kilometers per hour. He survived, but his 8-year-old daughter, watching from the stands, had a heart attack from the shock and died in the hospital. His wife couldn't forgive him and committed suicide 6 months later. David Williams vanished from the public eye, living on the streets until he showed up at Premium Auto Repair. Determined to confront Marcus, Sarah arrived at the shop only to find him recording a mocking video. You won't believe the story I have to tell, he said, laughing with Tyler and Jake. Guys, you humiliated a world legend because he looked poor, Sarah interrupted, turning her laptop to show them the evidence. The silence was deafening. David Williams, she said, lost everything after a personal tragedy and has been living on the streets for 15 years. Marcus's face turned pale. Just then, David entered the shop, accompanied by an elegantly dressed woman. Good morning, he said calmly. I brought someone who would like to see the workshop. As the tension in the room escalated, David revealed his identity. I'm here to fix a McLaren that you said was beyond repair. The mechanics were stunned. Yesterday, you laughed at my appearance and called me crazy, David said, his voice steady. But today, you'll find out what my true worth is. As the day unfolded, David's expertise shone through, and he fixed the McLaren in record time. Marcus, realizing the gravity of his actions, felt the weight of his arrogance crashing down. 2 hours, Marcus had said, his voice dripping with skepticism. If you don't fix it in that time, you're out of here for good. David nodded, his hands moving with a precision that captivated everyone in the shop. He opened the hood of the McLaren, and as he began to work, it was as if he were performing a delicate surgery. The mechanics watched in awe as he diagnosed the problem with an ease that seemed almost supernatural. Every movement was calculated, every decision precise as the clock ticked down. The atmosphere in the shop shifted from mockery to anticipation. Sarah could feel the tension building, and she found herself rooting for the man who had been so unjustly ridiculed. With just minutes to spare, David looked up, a glimmer of satisfaction in his eyes. "Done," he said simply. Catherine, the elegant woman who had accompanied him, stepped forward, her expression a mix of disbelief and hope. "Let's see if it works," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she turned the key. The engine roared to life, purring like a satisfied cat. The difference was palpable. Where there had been strange noises and hesitation, now there was only pure, controlled power. "My God," she murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "3 dealerships told me it was impossible to fix without replacing the entire module for $80,000. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. He had underestimated this man, and now he was faced with the consequences of his arrogance. As the mechanics exchanged glances, the weight of their earlier laughter hung heavy in the air. They had mocked a legend, and now they were witnessing his redemption. But just as the atmosphere began to shift, David turned to Marcus, his expression calm yet piercing. "You wanted to see a real mechanic?" he said, his voice steady. "Now you know what one looks like." The tension in the room was electric, and Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. "Do you still think I'm just a beggar?" David asked, his gaze unwavering. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. And in that moment, the realization hit him like a freight train. This was not just about a car. It was about respect, dignity, and the hidden depths of every individual. Yes, David prepared to leave. He paused at the door, looking back at the mechanics who had once laughed at him. "Remember this moment," he said quietly, "because it's not just about cars, it's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their circumstances." With that, he stepped out into the sunlight, leaving behind a workshop filled with stunned silence and a lesson that would resonate far beyond the walls of premium auto repair. And as Sarah watched him walk away, she knew this was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would change everything for everyone involved. Do you want to know the fate of the heroes? Please post part 2. Subscribe to the channel and continue watching. Your opinion and support are important to me. Leave it in the comments. Thank you.